What's up everybody and welcome to Bayonetta 3 Ending Explained. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Bayonetta Multiverse, how it's connected with everything, and where the franchise is going to go from here. With the multiverse question intact, we have a lot of main questions that need to be answered, such as, is the Bayonetta we're playing as in Bayonetta 3 the same as Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2? Are Bayonetta 1 and 2 not connected anymore due to possibly different worlds with different experiences? Who is the Bayonetta from the prologue or introduction of the game? And of course, we have a lot more questions about each and every member of the cast. What is Luka's true background? Who is Dark Adam and Dark Eve? How and who truly is the Singularity and how his plot came to be? All these questions, I got the answers for. But before I totally give them away, don't forget to subscribe, like the channel, comment, let me know your theories or just how much you enjoyed the Bayonetta series, the franchise itself, Bayonetta 3, it could be anything. It could be the music, it could be possibly you knew that there's going to be different dimensions, different multiverses of Bayonettas. Love to hear them, and thank you guys again. So let's talk about the most important thing in Bayonetta, the multiverse. And now, us knowing that the multiverse exists, we know that Bayo 1 and Bayo 2 exist in their own world. However, the Bayo 3 that we play as is the Bayonetta from Bayonetta 1 and 2. And all these questions are kind of answered. I know a lot of theorists out there and a lot of people were trying to say that every single Bayonetta is a different world, different experience in a different game. But there's a lot of things to debunk that besides literally the words in the journal that I'm going to be showing you. The first thing is that Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2 are connected to each other. So that can never be taken away because the idea of a time paradox only exists for Bayonetta 2. Now, I will explain why that only exists for the Bayo 2 one, but hear me out. For those who don't remember Bayo 1 and Bayo 2, Bayo 1 starts, well, quote, 500 years ago in the fictional European city of Vigrid. That is where the Lumen Sages and the Umbra Witches both were said to coexist because that area is closest to Inferno and Paradiso. Blah blah blah, eyes of the world, Bayonetta's father is the main bad guy, Baldur. And once you defeat him, the game ends. However, Bayonetta 2 literally takes place 2 months later. As stated in the plot, as stated throughout the manual of the game, it literally happens to our Bayo 1 to Bayo 2 is 2 months later. That game sets up the events of Bayonetta 1 because you work against Lopter, I'm not sure I'm saying the name correctly, and he essentially possesses a young Baldur who, well, after you defeat Lopter in your current time of Bayo 2, you send back the corrupt Baldur to start the events of Bayo 1, therefore a time paradox connecting those two games. Now, Bayo 1 or Bayo 3 is connected to every single one of these characters because the journal entries mention this. They talk about how Bayonetta 1 and Bayonetta 2 are connected to our origin or main Bayonetta. The main words we could take from here is from the Bayonetta 2 Bayonetta. Bayonetta 2, it says, quote, is almost exactly alike in appearance and fighting style. Among all of Bayonetta's counterparts, she seems to have walked on an almost identical path. Now, this is where you can start claiming that Bayonetta 1 Bayo is different from our Bayo. And that's absolutely true because, well, think about it like this. In a multiverse theory kind of thing, there's a 2-month gap. The Singularity does not care about time. He goes between each and every single world, destroys the Arc Eve, and therefore destroys that entire universe and planet. So, when Bayo 1 shows up, there is a 2-month gap between Bayo 1 and Bayo 2. The Singularity can happen at any time between those 2 months and go into an alternate universe of that Bayonetta 1. So therefore, if we're thinking about, let's call Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3, let's call that Earth 1 or Earth A here. In Earth A's timeline, we go Bayonetta 1, 2 months later, Bayonetta 2, X amount of years later, Bayonetta 3. Therefore, we understand on a straight line where it's going. However, between those 2 months of Bayo 1 and Bayo 2, the Singularity can appear, and that essentially creates a split and alternate timeline for the Bayonetta 1. That is why Bayonetta 1 doesn't look as mature as the Bayo 2 and Bayo 3. It's still a younger version of herself. They never were able to technically defeat Lobter and reset the timeline, etc., etc. Bayonetta 2, as the journal mentioned, basically did everything Bayo 1 did. I mean, did everything Bayo 1 did, and basically did everything Bayo 3 did. The main difference between Bayo 2 and Bayo 3, though, is just that Bayo 3 appears to live in New York City now, while Jean is also in New York City as a teacher and, of course, a secret superhero. This basically shows us that, okay, our Bayonetta is the Bayonetta we came, we experienced, and we played with. We were always the origin, the origin arc Eve, or the origin Bayonetta. We were always the main one, and it's going to come back to us no matter what. However, this doesn't answer the introduction. So, fun fact, after you beat the game, you actually get more journal entries based on every single character. So, every character you meet gets a archive entry, and Bayonetta 1 is not the Bayonetta we meet in the beginning of the game. That is actually the indomitable witch, Bayonetta B0, or Beta 0. This is the mother, the true mother of Viola. Not us. We are not the mother of Viola. While we have a relationship with Luka and we love him, we are still not the confirmed mother. And that is why the indomitable witch, Bayonetta in Beta 0, has a kid and looks like Bayonetta 1. Probably, to theorize here, that Bayonetta, after the events of Bayonetta 1, had a relationship with Luka. Therefore, they gave birth to their daughter, Viola. Now, a super interesting thing is, that beginning of the game is technically the beginning of the end, or the beginning of how the singularity started taking over. Because Bayonetta 1 joins Connor Sigurd's resistance. This is a key name, just remember that. And of course, she fought tirelessly against Singularity's invasion, but was ultimately defeated, as we know, because we literally play as her in the ruined New York. So, with her last bit of magic given upon Viola, she disappears and her job is done. This Bayonetta is still Bayo 1, and Bayonetta Beta 0, or the Indomitable Witch Bayonetta, still looks like Bayo 1. They didn't go through the trials and tribulations that Bayonetta 2 does, because they basically became a mother. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about Bayonetta is that at that point where we meet the other Bayonettas, the Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3, that is not Beta 0 Bayonetta. That is actually Bayonetta 1, Bayonetta 2, and Bayonetta 3. Her choice of line is a bit strange. Some people have said that was her infamous line in Bayonetta 1, which I don't fully agree, which is kind of weird, because I hope you didn't cry while I was gone, which would have made more sense if that Bayo-looking one said that to Viola. Then we would have known that was the Beta 0 Bayonetta. However, we know it's not the Indomitable Witch Bayonetta. We know that is Bayonetta 1, aka the Witch in Remembrance. These titles are important, and they're probably the best way to discern between each Bayonetta. But remember, the Witch in Remembrance, Bayonetta 1, and the Witch with Discerning Eyes, Bayonetta 2, are the ones that fight with you at the end of the game. That was a lot just to talk about Bayonetta and herself in the multiverse. So we were able to prove that Bayonetta 3, or basically the origin Bayonetta, aka the Witch of Genesis, is the original Bayonetta with the same past experiences as Bayo 1 and Bayo 2. Now, quick factoid, most people probably know this, but Witch of Genesis basically means Book of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible, and that is why Bayonetta is Eve. She is basically the mother of all life, which is why Luka is Adam. They are destined to be together in every single world. Now, a very interesting thing that I want to talk about before we jump into another 10-minute talk just about Luka himself is about multiverse character versions. This is going to be very important for Luka, but this is also important for a lot of characters. Viola doesn't exist in every single multiverse because Bayonetta has a different but loving relationship with Luka in every single one. It's different, but it's the same type of love. Now, we see multiple versions of Jean. We see other versions of her mother, of Rodin. I mean, not Rodin, excuse me, and Enzo. But we do not see any different versions of Rodin. Now, Rodin, my boy, he is the most powerful figure in the entire game. And this is what led me to also understanding how Bayonetta Multiverse works. Bayonetta Multiverse works like this. There are multiple worlds, multiple Earths, Gaias, whatever you want to call them. However, there is only one Inferno and one Paradiso. And this is very interesting because in his journal entry, it is mentioned that while he is not a resident of the world of chaos, because of that, he does not have any counterparts in the multiverse. He is rumored to deal weapons to customers on other worlds as well. So that means he probably knew about the multiverse all this time and he's never mentioned anything. He has probably given every single Bayonetta that we have seen their weapons of choice. Rodin always knew more than he let on, but he hung out in the origin world, the main world, World Genesis, Earth 1, whatever you want to call it, aka the game and the games that we've played is the truth and the real world, which I just think is really interesting. Rodin, just, you know, it's just the fact that he's just this omnipotent, omniscient figure that kind of shows that every single demon is connected to Bayonetta, and that is why she's able to control all the other demons, because Hell, Paradiso, etc., Inferno, all these places, World of Chaos, they're all connected. And that is why Bayonetta can control the other Bayonetta's summons. And it makes perfect sense. Now let's talk about Luka. Luka Redgrave. Literally one of the best characters possibly written in Bayonetta. I mean, every character is amazingly written, but my goodness, Luka is a fantastic character. However, he is a mysterious character. He always happens to be in the right place at the right time. And he just, you know, he's very reckless. And it's just, how does this happen to be? Where does this come? It's mentioned that they have a destined relationship, and the giving away of his key name of Adam and Eve is basically kind of the key, like, okay, they're going to be together. However, the important thing to know about Luka is that Luka is half the main bad guy here. And I know it's kind of weird, but Luka is destroyed in almost every multiverse at the time, okay? And this has to do with his other form called Strider. When Luka transforms into a werewolf, they call that Strider. And it's a strange creature that it's not angel, it's not demon, it's not human, but it's a beast man. The way this came to be is he was possessed by a version of him that died. And the version of him that died is called Dark Adam, which happens to be the fourth final boss. So if we're gonna go through the order of bosses, there was Strider, aka Luka, there was Dark Adam, then there was three forms of Singularity, and then there was Dark Eve. Now, Dark Adam is Luka. This, though, is a tragic symbol and former counterpart of Luka who lived in the Alphaverse. The Alphaverse just means the original site of the Singularity. It was the one world where not only Viola was born, but where Dr. Sigurd was able to, well, technically conquer and master the multiverse. Here, he was a soldier trying to stop Singularity. He had a daughter with Bayonetta, but of course, intent on getting revenge, he called on out to other counterparts through the multiverse, but his thirst for vengeance drew only malevolence, and he was transformed into this thing of hate. So therefore, as Dark Adam constantly traveled through every single multiverse trying to warn each and every single Luka, it started to grow and grow and grow with hate and power. And that is why Luka, when he becomes Strider, can't help but fight and kill everything. Dark Adam's call of the single truth, which is what he tries to tell everybody, troubled Luka for years. And eventually, it brought him to Thule, which is where we were jumping from multiverse to multiverse. And it merged with his body, and it gained the power of the Faerie. Now, Faerie is an important lore creature, but something that was never really mentioned much in Bayonetta. However, we can look at it like this. The only Luka that we know is truly Faerie is Liu Kang. And that's something I'm saying a Mortal Kombat character, but Liu Kang is a mysterious character that appears basically in the middle of the game. He looks like Luka, sounds like Luka, and he mentions to Viola that, well, they have some type of connection. He hints at what more it's going to be. He knew there was something wrong with the Luka from the Origin world, and he also knew that there was something connected to him and Viola and all of them as well. Now, he is later revealed, though, to be the king of a group named as the Faeries. They reside in basically the human world. Fairies have always existed in lore no matter what. They're not easy to find. But he is the counterpart of Luka. And like Luka, he is also guided by that voice in the head. However, because he is the king of the fairies and the most powerful of them, he was not infected by Dark Adam. In addition to Dark Adam technically being in the Origin Luka at the time. So, because of the fairy powers he possessed and being the king of the fairies, he was able to travel continuously between worlds. Now, that kind of explains everything about Luka. Luka is, of course, he's Adam, but it was very interesting to see what they did with his character. There was always a connection he had with Bayonetta, and I find it very cool that they were able to give him powers to play and compete with Bayonetta, to be more than just somebody who gets information, always happens to be there at the right time with a little bit of comedy. He was still just as funny, but he turned into be a valuable asset, and I honestly think he's one of the best written characters I've seen in a very long time. Finally, I got 2 things left to talk about. 2 main things. Technically 2.5. One, I want to talk about Sigurd. Now, Sigurd is a very interesting character because Dr. Sigurd is the Singularity. And, well, he's also not the Singularity. So let's talk about the Singularity first. The Crafted Tyrant Singularity. This is an entity that controls the homunculus biological weapons, and he is from the Alphaverse, aka Viola's world, aka Bayonetta Beta Zero, from Dark Adam's world, and, well, he's actually a completely self-aware artificial human. So he is not the Sigurd that we know, but he is. He began mass producing, and he rebelled against his creators, eventually eradicating all of humanity, and then realizing and expanding within the trinity of realities that if he kept doing this, he can destroy countless parallel worlds and then create his one ideological, one true world, where he controls destiny, he controls the truth, and he knows it all. The reason he has to go after Bayonetta is he needs to gain the power. He needs to basically bring all his homunculi with him instead of all the weakest versions of them. And as he's begun murdering each Bayonetta's counterparts on multiple parallel worlds, he is able to, well, gain more and more. That's why you see him absorb Bayonetta. But the important thing is Connor Sigurd the actual bad guy here? We talk about the Singularity, and, well, this man led the anti-Singularity resistance on Viola's world alongside with, well, Bayonetta. But we know the Singularity is him. So it's very strange that this character who is, quote, fighting against the Singularity is that character, and plants the idea inside Viola's head to go to these worlds and tell them to find Dr. Sigurd, because he's the only one who knows about the Chaos Gears and the multiverse, etc. So it's very interesting to kind of see this. However, Connor Sigurd is also human. The Singularity is something built possibly by this Sigurd, or based off him. He could have been the test subject here. However, Midmeyer's Sigurd, who is a student of the multiverse, is a scholar and the first of the human world who actually discovered and found out about the multiverse consisting of layered universes, and he dedicates his whole life to it. However, that's what's very strange. The Origin Sigurd, which is aka the one that we know, the main bad guy, the one from Bayonetta 3 world, he contacted his own counterparts, Resistant Commander Sigurd, right? Now this is where it gets very interesting, because he can not only he can't go between multiverses, but he can contact between each one. And that's why it's a bit strange, because the Singularity is technically him, but also technically not him. So by contacting and communicating with other parallel worlds, he talked to Connor Sigurd. He has he knows about Chaos Gears, he knows about stopping the invasion. He also is able to predetermine everything because he's able to look at all these other worlds going through very similar things or very, well, similar fates, similar truths. So what I'm trying to say here is that every single Sigurd was in cahoots with each other. And it seems even if they weren't, they were, because Mid-Myers and the Singularity were able to influence and contact every single Sigurd. So if we think about, let's just say if he was a young scientist, the ideas, the knowledge of creating homunculi in the multiverse are probably directed from Mid-Myers and from the Singularity itself. Therefore, technically, the Connor Sigurd who died in the beginning of the game is probably the truest bad guy out there that didn't even know he was a bad guy. Last but not least, let's just talk about where the franchise is going to go from here. As you know, at the end of the game, Bayonetta bestows the family name of Bayonetta onto Viola. And while I'm not a big fan of Viola's gameplay, this essentially keeps the Bayonetta name and franchise alive in case they were going to do anything with it. Because every single version or multiverse world of Bayonetta technically shouldn't exist. However, there are a lot of questions that are open. The main thing I'm concerned and questioning about is that, is Bayonetta and is Luka truly dead in the Origin world? I only ask this because the way Bayonetta, quote, dies in Bayonetta 3 is he gets Bayonetta 2 Jean, which doesn't mean anything. Her body was off screen. That means you can do anything with it. Only her soul was taken to hell because that is the, code and rule of the Umbra Witches as stated in Bayonetta 2. However, Bayonetta 2 proved that you can save a soul and a life if you were able to go to Inferno, stop the demons from having it, and, well, yeah. That's why I was very confused at the end. It was good that Luka saved Viola from dying over there, but when the summon, Gamora knocked Bayonetta's soul out from her subconscious body, that just left the opening of like, oh, okay, they could just go save Bayonetta. Like, this isn't the end of Bayonetta. But at the same time, it possibly is. It's just I'm letting you guys know that she's probably not dead because we were able to rescue Jean in a very similar circumstance. And last but not least, the idea of multiverses, well, most of the worlds are destroyed at this point. That there's no coming back from. But I think it's very interesting to know that once Bayonetta perished, the world didn't end. And that kind of goes against Bayonetta Beta 3, the Cloistered Witch, which is basically, to put it in simple terms, Cairo, Egypt, Bayonetta. In that world, Bayonetta was not the Arch-Eve. Jean was the Arch-Eve due to being the most powerful or having the strongest will and soul. According to the Unwavering Witch Jean Beta 3 catalog, they talk about how her noble spirit and strong mind made her the Arch-Eve of her world. Therefore, the Arch-Eve of the Origin world should have decimated and destroyed it once she passed along, because Viola technically didn't have the right mindset, the strong will, or somebody else got passed along as the Arch-Eve and you have to hunt them out. These are all possible stories that could go on with Bayonetta 4 or Bayonetta 3 DLC side story. And it's just interesting to note that Bayonetta is not the Eve in every single world. Therefore, Eve and Adam can be designated to a different individual with a strong connection. And it just leaves the possibility of the future of the franchise to still be open. But that's it for that. I know I definitely talked your ear off. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, definitely once you beat the game, I'm going to be looking for more and more secrets as it goes along. But these were most of the secrets and stuff that you get after you complete the game. I was able to go through and kind of theorize for about, a few hours, just kind of going, okay, I need to do this. I need to draw here. I kind of understand where it's coming from. And really, they did an amazing job with the game. Highly recommended. Go buy it, like a 9.5 out of 10. And guys, thank you.